Hey, now we're getting somewhere. Just to recap the previous reviews in this feature, I gave the Japanese Mario movie a 6, the American one a 4, the Japanese Street Fighter movie got a 6, Double Dragon got a 1, and the American Street Fighter movie got a 4. So far, so bad. So very, very bad. And really, I'm trying to be generous here, taking these movies for what they are, at face value, and not really having high expectations. But even with that in hand, most movies based on video games are just pretty bad. Mortal Kombat was the first one I remember really enjoying as a kid. I wasn't a huge fan of the games. I liked them just fine and had both Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat 2 on the Super NES at the time. But I felt that the games were a bit on the overrated side, and overall inferior to Street Fighter 2. But if I could praise Mortal Kombat for one thing, even back then, it was having interesting characters and an interesting story. Looking back on it, the first two Mortal Kombat games weren't all that much more fleshed out than Street Fighter 2, but for some reason the characters really resonated with me, and the thought of seeing a movie based on it made sense. Not to mention that the Street Fighter movie was such a disaster. Surely Hollywood would have learned from its mistakes, right? When I saw Mortal Kombat as a kid, I loved it. To me, this was the standard by which every video game movie that came after it would be judged, and many of them came up short. As an adult, it's kind of interesting how things worked out. For the one part, when I sat down to rewatch Mortal Kombat for the first time in many years, I did have it on VHS, but I haven't had a VCR in ages, I for some reason expected not to like it. Partly because a lot of things you like as a teenager seem dumb to you when you're in your 30s. Your standards are just higher. As a teenager, I was really concerned with how close it was to the games, and it was pretty damn close, at least for a movie that was rated PG-13 and didn't show the kind of violence shown in the games. It was a very reasonable facsimile of both the tone and plot of the games. But as an adult, I worry less about how close these movies are to the source material, and more of how well they tell a story. It doesn't have to be the same story from the games exactly, but I do want to be entertained, and my intelligence not insulted. In other words, when it comes to movies, it's not the story you tell, but how you tell it. So for that reason, I reasoned that I would probably be less favorable of Mortal Kombat than I was back then. Another interesting thing is that I've become a much bigger fan of the game series, and honestly, I felt that the latest game, simply called Mortal Kombat, was better than Street Fighter 4. So there's something to chew on. Anyway, let's talk about the movie. Although it's simply called Mortal Kombat and mostly adapts the plot of the first game, there's a lot of elements of Mortal Kombat 2, including characters like Kitana and the Outworld setting near the end of the movie. Like I said, the plot of the games wasn't too fleshed out back then. Now, Mortal Kombat had a pretty good mythology going, but back then it was pretty thin, and a lot of the new additions seem to have been actually come from the movie itself, just altered a bit. The movie is about the Mortal Kombat tournament, which is held once a generation, a contest between two realms, Earthrealm and Outworld. If Outworld wins 10 tournaments in a row, the Emperor of Outworld, Shao Kahn, can merge the two into one realm and rule it. Outworld currently has 9 victories, and so they really, really want this next one. The reigning champion of Mortal Kombat is a beastly four-armed guy named Prince Goro, and even after he's defeated, the former champion, the sorcerer Shang Tsung, can challenge the winner for one final bout. The champion of Earthrealm is the Thunder God Raiden. One weird thing is that you'd expect Raiden to gather together the Earthrealm warriors, and in a sense he does, bringing the hero Liu Kang into it, but Shang Tsung himself brings Johnny Cage into the tournament, the guy who winds up killing Goro, and his flunky, Kano, lures Sonya Blade into the tournament, who winds up killing him. Way to go, Outworld idiots. There's some setup to the characters. Liu Kang was a Shaolin monk who left the monastery to lead a normal life in America, but is called back after hearing that Shang Tsung killed his brother. Johnny Cage is a martial arts action star who's having trouble with the media saying he's a fake, and wants to prove himself. And Sonya Blade is after the criminal Kano who killed her partner. Outworld has a lot of generic guys for them to fight, along with recognizable characters such as Shao Kahn's adopted daughter Kitana, the creature Reptile, and the ninjas Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and of course Kano, Goro, and Shang Tsung. One issue I had with the Street Fighter movie was not enough martial arts action, which is honestly what you come into this sort of movie to see, and Mortal Kombat definitely delivers in this stance. You get group fights, one-on-one fights, two-on-one fights, pretty much anything you can imagine. Although Mortal Kombat was a very violent video game whose existence gave birth to the ESRB, it was still created before the ESRB, and therefore wasn't rated, and therefore the fan base was a lot of teenage kids. And the studio's decision to make the movie PG-13, I actually support this for two reasons. One is that it doesn't alienate the teenaged audience that wanted to see the movie by forcing them to either beg their parents to take them or sneak in. And two, because the movie is already pretty over the top, and if you start showing Sub-Zero ripping off heads, it would have come off more as silly than anything. That's not to say that nobody dies. Sub-Zero gets impaled, Scorpion blows up, though he's a ghost anyway. Kano gets his neck broken, Goro falls off a cliff, and Shang Tsung is impaled on spikes. The entire thing leads up to a battle between Shang Tsung and Liu Kang, and the outcome is obvious, but along the way there's a lot of great action and enough story parts to keep the movie grounded, but not enough to make it dull. The thing that I still like about this movie is that it's wholly unpretentious. It never pretends to be high cinema. The actors and crew never pretend they're making Citizen Kane or The Godfather, they're making Mortal Kombat, and they treat the source material with respect, but without trying to pretend it's anything more than a martial arts movie based on a martial arts video game. The acting is about what you'd expect. You got guys like Christopher Lambert and Robin Shou. They're B-listers, but I don't say that in a bad way. A-list actors would have been wrong for this movie, and B-list actor does not mean bad actor. It just means someone who's recognizable without being really famous. Most of the actors also have experience in martial arts, so the fight scenes come off as somewhat realistic, except for the parts where they try and mimic moves from the game, but those are thrown in as nuggets to the fans anyway. Mortal Kombat isn't the sort of movie you expect to win a load of awards or make $500 million or be considered a classic, but it's an entertaining film that does exactly what it sets out to do. It's satisfying to a Mortal Kombat fan and not confusing or silly to a non-fan. Also, the special effects are pretty good for the time, although the CGI reptile has not aged well. I'm going to give it an 8 out of a possible 10, and I have to say, as much as I enjoy writing bad reviews for terrible movies, it's nice to finally write a good one in this feature. Of course, it may be the last one for a few days.